Hi folks, welcome back. So just got a new hoodie. It's like Conrail blue. Also kind of matches my car. But I turned down the heat in the house just so I can enjoy it a little bit. Anyways, the reason we're here today is this is kind of a weekend update on some projects that are going on, and also some future things that I'm doing. So what we're going to be working on today is this. This is the BLI Challenger 3977. Picked this up used a couple months ago. Was the one that was in the video versus the Athearn Challenger. Shortly after the making of that video, the motor control seemed to die. So I know I've seen at least one other one. It's a Challenger. I know a friend of mine had a Challenger that had the same problem from Broadway. They seem to do the same resolution for mine as his. So they sent a new decoder after I sent back the old one, and they also sent a motor. I don't think the motor's bad, but I mean, it's kind of cool that they sent a spare motor. So they're trying to get ahead of the problem. That's a good thing. So anyways, we're going to put the decoder back in here. I had originally left this apart because I figured since the decoder went bad anyway, that I was just going to convert this to ESU. I'm going to hold off on that mainly because I want to see what kind of happens here moving forward with scale trains using the MTH toolings in their steam locomotives and using ESU. If those engines have a smoke unit, I may be able to adapt that to older Broadway models, but that's kind of a long way off. So for the meantime, I don't really fool with any of the wiring back here just because I would rather do that conversion once. I know a lot of you have been wanting to see the video on how to put in an aftermarket decoder and still retain the smoke function, but I think that process is not going to be the most efficient way of doing things going forward, so I'm going to hold off on that for now. But for the meantime here, I'm going to snap in this new decoder. In taking it apart, which I didn't really need to take all of the tender apart, but I was kind of curious on what kind of speaker setup they had in there. I damaged the factory speakers, which is not a problem anyway, because I wanted to try out these high bass speakers, so I'm going to glue those up in the enclosure there, and we'll try those out, see how it works. These are 4 ohm speakers, so I'm going to wire these up in series, which should produce that 8 ohm load that we're looking for, that will run off of the BLI decoder here. And hopefully it is just the decoder. I don't really want to go through all the steps of putting in the additional motor in there if I don't have to. I'm pretty sure there's nothing actually wrong with this motor, but we'll see. So once I get it all back together here, we'll do some testing. So fast forward several hours here, got it all back together and running again. So just swapped out the decoder. I didn't need to use the extra motor that BLI sent me. It actually wasn't a problem. As soon as I plugged in the new decoder, everything seemed to work just fine. The speaker setup that I wanted to use, which was these two, I'm trying to pick them up here, mega bass speakers here. These actually didn't sound nearly as good as kind of the factory style, which is kind of your regular 28mm style. Kind of like these. These were the damaged ones here. But found another set of these that I had laying around and put those in there and made a couple adjustments in the tender, and it sounds incredible. Also, another little problem I ran into is I found that the one side here was a little bit dimmer than the other side, and apparently there was a little bit of a grease buildup under the surface mount LED, so I just took that apart and cleaned it a little bit. Also cleaned off any of the excess smoke that was kind of in the boiler. Sometimes these engines with smoke units kind of make a mess of the interior of the engine. But in just running it here, it's super smooth. So really nothing else much more to show on this one. Probably the biggest takeaway from this is that, you know, some of these Challengers do have a decoder problem, and BLI seems to be addressing them. I had no trouble reaching them. They sent me out the replacements that I needed. I just had to send my old decoder back. Really no issues. I mean, there's a week or two of turnaround time, but I can't complain about that. I wish I had those good of experiences with other manufacturers. Speaking of which, in regards to my SD80 Max, I have still not been able to fix them. I have tried calling after them 3 times now with no response. So, go figure. People kind of accused me online of bashing Athearn a little bit, but, you know, I've pretty much disclosed everything that I'm experienced with them, and they're just not responding to me. So, you know, if I'm critical of them, they deserve it. Moving on here, another project that I'm working on. This is an engine I picked up over summer. Is the pink Rimmon unit. Got that from Midwest Model Railroad a couple months ago. It's the non-sound version, so I've been kind of gathering some parts for it. I got some UP Gray, which is not quite the right color. I might have to try another one. Got the scale coat here. New UP Yellow. The decoder that I had for it I actually used for another project, and it ended up being bad in the 80 Max, so I sent it back to ESU, and they just sent me back a new decoder today. So another good experience there. And I got a scale sound system speaker for it. I got the Walthers detail kit, which includes all the little grab irons and things for it. There's a number of things that it doesn't include, but I have a lot of detail parts on order. And a decal sheet here because I think there's a lot of decals for the roof that I'm going to need off of this. So that's all I have for that part right now. And some other things here. I am going to do a video about this Dash 9 demo that I built a long time ago. So that'll be coming. I got some Stewart cars here to build. I have the GP9 that's actually in the Pennsylvania Museum to build. One of the Heritage units just to put LEDs and sound in. Freight car. I have the Union Pacific Gray Ghost. Been working on for years. Never really finished it. Some freight cars. Some repair work here. What was the other thing I'm working on? In the process of finishing up my UP excursion train video, which will be coming soon. Also another one, I picked up an Excella set a couple years ago that I'm going to try to do something cool with here. A couple parts that I still need for it. Also somewhere back here, maybe? Oh, right here. Can't really see it, but that's a GP38 high hood. Norfolk Southern that's going to get Tsunami 2 and LEDs. That's going to turn out pretty cool. This is the UP Gray Ghost project that's kind of been on hold for quite some time. And one of the cool things it has is it has a brand new Kato motor in there. And of course the ESU, I believe that's a Select 4.0 that's in there. And also I did a little bit of super detailing on it here. You can kind of see those cables underneath there for the traction motors. Nice little touch. Working on, of course, converting it to LED. I want to give it functional ditch lights. One of the problems is with this, it came with fake low-mounted ditch lights, but the actual real one of these used high-mounted ditch lights, which not sure if I'm going to be able to pull that off, or really even that I want to go through all that work to do that. I will, of course, make the ditch lights functional, but I have a feeling at some point Probably somebody will release a actual correct version of this engine. I'm hoping, if anybody does AC 4400s properly someday. Last but not least, I want to talk to you about an event that I'm going to run here in March, and it's going to be kind of a March Madness type related event. For those of you that watch the basketball tournament, typically there's, well, it's more than 64 teams now, but it used to be traditionally 64 teams, and then there would be a bracket, single elimination to determine the champion. So we're going to run a similar format, and it's going to be for basically pulling power on locomotives. I originally wanted to have both a steam and a diesel field. However, with most steam engines, since they do have traction tires on them, two of those kind of pulling in opposite directions with traction tires, it isn't really going to work out right. Being that there's metal, just metal on regular metal rails, with the diesel engines, really none of those use traction tires. I think it'd be a little bit better competition. But anyways, how it's going to work is, you've seen on a lot of my previous videos, I've done tug of war competitions. So what it's going to be is there's going to be, I looked over my diesel fleet here. I have, I think, 22 different types of diesel engines from various manufacturers. I'm going to pick my top 16, and those top 16 are going to be seeded kind of based on my best guess as to, you know, what would be a number 1 seed, 16 seed, obviously being what I would expect to be the weakest of pulling power. And I'm going to make a bracket, and they're going to face off, you know, 16 seed versus 1 seed. And we're going to go through the bracket, and we're going to determine a champion. And my hope is with this, you know, next year, typically I always get at least 3 to 4 new diesels a year. So typically I would hope to have new engines in the mix every single year as we move on. And it will kind of determine, you know, who is the strongest out of the manufacturers out there, who makes the best pulling locomotive. There's been a lot of questions about that, on which engines are better than others and what is the strongest possible diesel out there. So I think this will answer a lot of those questions. Now, obviously, I don't have every single engine that's on the market. There's some big ones that I'm missing, like Scale Train's Tier 3 GEVOs. There's not going to be enough time for me to pick one of those up. I don't currently have a Scale Train's Tier 4 that I can put into the competition. So, you know, it's going to be out of what I have, and hopefully every single year we get to improve the field a little bit. But I think it'll be fun. We're going to try it out, see what happens. One of the other things you'll notice in the background here, I got these neon lights that come with a little remote. You can change the color on them. Pretty cool. So I'm going to put those in a couple different places, and maybe we'll have a cool light show in here at some point. I had 2 of them. The one I put into a different room for now, so I don't exactly know what I'm going to do with these, but I think they look pretty cool. So that's about it for this one. So definitely some things upcoming. March is going to be a busy month. Hoping that the Broadway Limited releases come out here soon, both the Class A Norfolk and Western and also the Y6B. Really hoping that Y6B comes out, because if that does come out, I may just have a separate Steam competition for the March Madness anyway, because I really want to see if anybody can take down that Broadway Limited big boy in pulling power. I've always wanted to see if a Y6B versus that thing, who would be the strongest of the steam engines for pullers. So we'll see how that turns out, and if anything comes in here in the next month or so. There'll probably be another video which is announced as I'm going to call it the selection show, just like they have for the actual tournament. And then we're going to announce what locomotives are going to be in it. I would like to get a scale, just to have a weigh-in for the engines. And also I would like a huge whiteboard so that we can actually write down the bracket. I don't know if I'll be able to gather those things or not, but we'll see. But that's about it for this one. So some exciting things to come.